2021-2019, and for other purposes. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, the consideration of 8169 is in order.
Under the agenda this morning, Mr. President, is the interpellation of the general principles. With that, may we now recognize the sponsor and chairperson of the Committee on Finance, the distinguished senator from Antique, Senator Lauren Legarda, and the first on the list to interpellate the distinguished senator is Senator Ping Lacson of Cavite, the distinguished gentleman from Cavite. May we recognize them both.
The lady from Antique, chairman of the Committee on Finance, is recognized, and to interpellate, Senator Ping Lacson.
Thank you and good morning, Mr. President. First, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank, commend, and congratulate the distinguished lady from Antique, Malabon, Makati, Republic of the Philippines for putting all the hard work to her mandate as chair of the Finance Committee of this chamber. However, I'd like to be clarified on certain matters and issues concerning general principles, as a matter of fact, Mr. President. And number one on my list of topics would be, of course, pork barrel. The first question is, what is the state policy on pork barrel in the context of the Supreme Court ruling on Belgica versus Ochoa? Of course, it goes without saying that before that question is answered, we'll have to agree on the definition of pork barrel, including acts that are deemed unconstitutional by the court in the said ruling. May this representation get the opinion of the distinguished sponsor in this regard, Mr. President?
Mr. President, of course, any post-enactment is not allowed. Any post-enactment or intervention of a lawmaker. We all know that the General Appropriations Act is the most important policy legislation of Congress. And as the President's budget traverses the legislative journey coming from the SONA to the lower house, Congress, and then to the Senate, and then the bicameral conference committee, we go through the process of legislation just like any law, and therefore amend along the way, both committee and individual amendments. However, any post-enactment, unlike before the Supreme Court decision, post-enactment is no longer allowed. Therefore, any lump sums and a lawmaker, senator or congressman, to designate where it should go to a certain municipality or project is therefore not allowed. I think I don't need to read into the record the Supreme Court decision, which explicitly explains what is not allowed, or would you want me to put it on record? Can I have it, please?
I have some excerpts, Mr. President, of the Supreme Court ruling.
Mr. President, this is the dispositive portion of the Supreme Court decision. Mahaba po eh.
Yes.
Okay, all legal provisions of past and present congressional pork barrel laws, such as the previous PDAF, CDF, articles and various congressional insertions, which authorize legislators, whether individually or collectively organized into committees, to intervene, assume, participate in any of the various post-enactment stages of the budget execution, such as but not limited to areas of project identification, modification, revision of project provisions of past and present congressional pork barrel laws, blah, blah, blah. It's very, very long. It simply says, Mr. President, that anything post-enactment, meaning after, thank you, the President signs the budget, must not be intervened into or meddled into by lawmakers.
In other words, simply put, the opinion of the distinguished sponsor is all measures, all post-enactment measures are considered pork. Otherwise, hindi po yung pork.
I'm sorry? Post.
Yeah, post.
Yes, yes.
Meaning, fund utilization through various post-enactment measures, yun lang po yung pork. All others, hindi mako-consider.
I would not say yun lang po. I read a provision and there could be other nuances, interpretations of this, Mr. President. We all know if there are 100 lawyers in a room, 100 lawyers will have 200 opinions.
I'm aware of that, Mr. President.
And there are 23 senators in this chamber,
So
and we have
there'll be
2,300 opinions.
Thank you,
So,
Mr. President.
I may not be a lawyer, Mr. President, but
I
can...
have on the screen,
Yeah.
Mr. President, acts that are deemed unconstitutional. Hindi naman relevant yung A and B, so hindi ko na sinama. No? But letter C, all legal provisions of past and present congressional pork barrel laws such as the previous PDAP and CDF articles and the various congressional insertions which conferred personal lump sum allocations to legislators from which they are able to fund specific projects which they themselves determine. Now let's go to letter D, Mr. President.
Wait, at least-
All informal practices of similar import and effect, which the court similarly deems to be acts of grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of discretion, are also declared void by the Supreme Court. Now, Mr. President, to simplify this discussion, I would like to make some illustrative samples. No? Let's go to the Tulong Dunong provision of the... I will... Let's proceed with the discussion, Mr. President. Tulong Dunong. Okay, these are examples of the Tulong... Medyo malit. Yan, Tulong Dunong program. Ano? You can identify the congressman there. Well, hindi ko na sinama yung mga senador muna, Mr. President. Mga congressmen muna. These are samples, no? So, what do these indicate? That legislators have a say in the implementation of projects, which is the exclusive domain of the executive branch. Under CHED. But who are implementing this, the Tulong Dunong projects? Isn't it the legislators?
Mr. President, yes. I learned about Tulong Dunong when I became chairman of the budget, especially because I would hear about it from congressmen and some senators who were congressmen before, who are in this chamber today, who are experts in Tulong Dunong, like Senators Recto and Subiri.
Well, Mr. President,
Let me finish, Mr. President. All I'm saying, no, don't be defensive, Majority Leader. All I'm saying is that Tulong Dunong is not the creation of a congressman or senator. It is a program of the Commission on Higher Education, even while we did not have the free tertiary education law yet, that gives free college education for state universities and colleges and tech-voc state institutions and local government colleges. Tulong Dunong would assist in tuition fees.
I know that, Mr.
of
President.
indigents.
We're talking here of the Constitution. We're talking here of the
Yes.
budgeting process.
Yes.
We're talking here of the Supreme Court ruling on Belica versus Ochoa. Like, take, for example, this particular letter now addressed to, look, relative to our congressional allotment for the Commission on Higher Education, may I wish to endorse you, mali pa nga eh, to my official congressional focal person who will facilitate the coordination of the application for scholarship grants. Then this is implementation. If this is not implementation, tell me what is, Mr. President.
Ano po?
If this is not implementation of a project named or under the Tulong Dunong program,
Okay.
tell me what is.
Ganito po. Tulong Dunong is a laudable program of the Commission on Higher Education. It should be the CHED and the SUC or the private HEI that should be implementing it. For example, if I were to put Tulong Dunong as an amendment, I will not name the beneficiaries in a college or university. Let the CHED implement it.
But they're the ones determining who are the beneficiaries. As a matter of fact, some legislators are even distributing the checks themselves.
I don't know that. I've
So,
never done
is
that
that-
in my 3 terms.
So I go back to my previous
So
question.
I'm not
Is
in a
that
position
pork?
to answer that.
I go back to my previous question. Is that pork or not?
That's pork.
Is that
Sir,
pork or not, Mr. President?
I think it's lechon.
Yeah, it's lechon. It's pork.
Mr.
Yeah.
President, just
You know,
to-
if it looks like pork, it smells like pork,
it tastes like pork.
chopped like pork, then it must be pork.
Yes, Mr. President, kaklaruhin lang na po natin para po wag naman masira ang programa ng pamahalaan na tumutulong sa maraming mahihirap na kabataan. Maganda po ang tulong dunong. At hindi po mali at masama na may kongresista o senador na nag-aamenda para magbigay ng tulong dunong sa ilalim po ng CHED sa kanyang distrito.
I don't think we're on the same page, Mr.
Yes,
President.
however,
It's a
Mr.
laudable
President,
project, as
but
you
the
said.
CHED should implement it.
Yes, but the legislators have no business implementing projects because that's the exclusive domain or jurisdiction of the executive branch.
Opo, hindi po dapat may post-enactment by post-identification of beneficiaries.
How much is the Tulong Dunong budget under the NEP, Mr. President? And then under the House version and eventually under the Senate version? Under NEP muna.
1.9 billion, Mr. President.
1.193, Mr.
Under
President.
the NEP.
1.193 billion under the NEP. Then sa GAB, paki-flash nga para makita natin. Yes. Under the House version, as transmitted to the Senate, naging 1.968, so nadagdagan ito. Look, under the Senate Committee report, which is now under deliberation, lumobo po ito ng 3 billion. Now, I will not ask any more for details, Mr. President. No? I will just make this argument na since the Universal Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act or the Free-Tuition Law, with the proposed 2019 budget of 43.308 billion pesos has been passed by this Congress last year, hasn't Tulong Dunong become redundant and a duplication and should therefore be deleted or realigned? Di ba dapat i-realign na lang natin yan, i-augment na lang natin sa Free-Tuition Act na pinasa natin last year. Because right now, ang budget ng Free-Tuition Act, 43.308 billion. So kung dadagdagan natin ng 3.08 under the or 3.108 under the Senate version, depending on DBM and CHED, if they see the need for fund augmentation, Mr. President. If they don't see the need to augment the funds of CHED under the Free-Tuition Act, then we might as well just delete it or realign it to serve better purpose, Mr. President. I don't think the sponsor is listening to my question,
Mr. President, because I was addressing your earlier question and discussing with LBM, I apologize for that. Mr. President, the 43 billion under the tertiary education law is sufficient,
Okay.
I believe, to fund the tuition. The Tulong Dunong, as you very well know, addresses not only the issue of tuition, but also allowances, transportation, dormitory, computers, books, and all other needs of
That is
our
correct.
indigent youths.
That is correct. And there are parameters. At least, hindi discretionary, unlike the Tulong Dunong, which is talagang discretionary because the congressman can just choose a daughter or a son of one of his leaders and make him a beneficiary. Unlike the CHED program under the tertiary education, di ba may mga requirements dyan na kailangan pumasa sa exams, kailangan enrolled na or about to enroll. Di ba mas maganda yung programa na yon? So why don't, and it is definitely a duplication. This is redundant eh.
Mr. President, gaya po ng sinabi ko, yung free tertiary education, pag i-lodge natin lahat doon, mapupunta lang po sa tuition. Yung mga
No, Mr. President. Meron niyang miscellaneous. May mga kasamang mga services yan. Hindi lang free tuition yung coverage ng quality access to tertiary education.
kasama po yung pare LGC at saka TESDA state-owned. Pero ang problema po ganito, yung tulong-dunong po na dumidiretso sa SUC dahil libre na po ang tuition. Diretso pong mabilis ang pag-download sa mahirap na estudyante para sa kanilang ibang pangangailangan maliban sa libreng tuition. Pag dinadaan po sa CHED, sa experience ko, ay dahil libre na po ang edukasyon, the download po ng CHED sa SUC o sa EGC ay mas tatagal po ang proseso at ang bata ay merong libreng tuition pero walang dormitoryo, libro, computer or pangangailangan. Kaysa pagdiretso na po ang tulong-dulong
Kasama
sa
po lahat yan.
HAI.
Andito po may hawak na kopya ng batas yung aking staff. Kasama po lahat yan doon sa Quality Access to Tertiary Education Act. Ang point dito, Mr. President, at least may mga requirements, may vetting process, yung tertiary education, yung access to quality tertiary education. Unlike the Tulong Dunong program, this is discretionary and arbitrary.
Mr. President.
Wala, it's on the discretion of the legislator to choose who will benefit doon sa kanyang Tulong Dunong program.
May I put into the record, Mr. President, I'm not the author of this Tulong Dunong. This has been here since before we
No, I'm not saying
became
that you're the
senator.
author. What I'm saying
Yes.
is it has become irrelevant, it has become redundant, it is now a duplication of the act that we passed last year.
Ito po, meron pong hindi po discretionary to dahil po merong mga requirements. Ito po, graduating high school students, dapat ang kanyang general weighted average ay at least 80% sa third year at 80% sa first 3 grading periods ng fourth year. Students who earned units in college, weighted average passing grade at least 2 semesters and enrolled in identified priority courses in HEIs. And students who passed the alternative, the ALS, learning system and the Philippine Education Placement test. And then the program can also be availed of by PWDs, solo parents, cultural minorities, the IPs, hill tribes, senior citizens. So there are many requirements of Tulong Dunong. It is not simply like a cash cow that you can give away. 80%, next semester, etc. Marami pong nakalista po dito na requirements bago po sila maka-access ng Tulong Dunong.
Your Honors, if we can agree that the Tulong Dunong program is laudable, as being manifested by the chairman, to remove the color of the pork, why don't we just retain what was in the NEP? It proposed to retain what was in the NEP so that it can continue, but remove the additional 2 billion as being
With all
shown
due
by
respect,
Senator Lacson.
Mr. President, the question I'm raising here is the implementation of the project, of the program.
So even the 1.1 billion is being questioned as far as the...
Because as shown in the illustrative samples, legislators are allowed under the Tulong Dunong program to implement projects which is not allowed or which has been declared void in the Supreme Court ruling on Belica versus Ochoa. Hindi na po pwede mag-implement ang mga legislators. And clearly, they're announcing it eh. They're on Facebook.
Alam mo, ang kailangan lang po, hindi masama yung programa, in fact, laudable. Importante lang sa implementasyon ng CHED ng Tulong Dunong ay maging stricto sila na hindi mag-identify ng mahirap na benepisyaryo ang lawmaker. Kasi ito po, kailangan may qualification requirements eh. Graduating high school students, annual gross income of parents not to exceed 350,000 a year, napaka-stricto ng application procedures and documentary requirements. Ang haba-haba nga eh. Then, ini-evaluate pa ng SUC yung mga dokumento at ranko ng qualified applicants. Tapos, may mga notice of award. Ang dami academic requirements, incoming freshmen eligible for college should show their high school report card. Kailangan may earned units na ganito. May
Mr. President.
Ang haba na nga ng requirements, Mr. President.
Ang laki ng cheque, Mr. President, namimigay.
Anong
How
distrito
could
po
a
yan?
legislator distribute checks to beneficiaries? This is plain and simple implementation of projects.
Siguro, sumaling siya sa programa. Pagbawal natin.
Ipagbawal.
O di, pagbawal na lang natin.
Correct.
Ganun lang, oo. Sumali lang yun. To be fair, okay, let me just, I hope my good vice
I
chair,
will not argue this much, Mr. President, kung wala tayong pinasang Access to Quality Tertiary Education Act, kasi at least merong pag-asa yung mga kababayan natin sa malalayo, dahil may kakilala silang mga congressmen, may pag-asa sila sa makapag-aral. But then, we have already passed the Pre-Tuition Act. So, why is there a need to duplicate the provisions of the Pre-Tuition Act? That's my basic point, Mr. President.
Mr. President, I would welcome a special provision in the CHED budget or even a general provision on the strict, just reiterating the strict post-enactment ban. I will follow your lead. I'm in agreement with you. Now,
Mr.
if you would
President,
like to
since-
ban pictures, paano na yung mga re-elections dyan? Of lawmakers in events where anything distributed from the executive is done. Okay, I will go with you. We'll just shake hands and then not
Mr.
stay beside
President, I'm not trying to
LGUs
be
who give out.
difficult, but since this is a policy question, may we ask the opinion of the DBCC on the matter? Pwede ba natin sila makonsulta? Kasi policy po ito eh. Hindi magparitrato, mag-implement, Mr. President. Hindi naman bawal magparitrato eh. Bawal mag-implement ang mga lawmakers.
Session is suspended. Happy birthday, Vanessa. God bless.
sinabi ko na. Hindi kaya nga ay malaki siguro yung bago. May bago. So hindi magko-congress na yun. Marami na sa commitment sa MPP. Pero sa atin naman, issue sa policy yan. Babanggitin ko mamaya, remember the case of the late Diaz, yung kanya scholarship program, ang liquidating instruments puro rest.
Tagal na sa Pagcor yun. Magaling naman. Okay. So ngayon, sinabi na ilalagay na siya ron, di ba? Mukhang ngayon, balita nila kagabi, meron na namang inilalagay na ibang tao. So parang baka nakakalimutan ni Gigi. Paalala mo sa chairman, sa sponsor natin, yung nirecommend ako. Di ba? Michael Bukala. Noon, napangako na nila Didi noon sa akin. Di ba? 20 years na siya sa Pagcor. Mga 2-3 months ago pa. At inulit. Session is resumed.
Two things to my esteemed Vice Chair, Senator Lacson. First, I will welcome a very strict general or special provision on the reiteration of the Supreme Court ruling on post-enactment of any sort. Second, I accept your proposal to bring back the Tulong Dunong to the NEP level and abolish whatever has been amended by the House and the Senate Committee report.
Mr. President, may I respond, Mr. President? Whether it's 1.19 billion or 1.96 billion or 3.108 billion, it's still pork. And talking about being a laudable project, Mr. President, let me quote from the Supreme Court ruling, the last portion. Sinabi rito, clearly, the court finds the 2013 PDAP article as well as all congressional pork barrel laws of similar operation to be unconstitutional. that such budgeting system provides for a greater degree of flexibility to account for future contingencies cannot be an excuse to defeat what the Constitution requires. Clearly, the first and essential truth of the matter is that unconstitutional means do not justify even commendable ends, Mr. President. So let's not talk about being laudable or commendable. It is the Constitution, Mr. President, plain and simple. So whether it's 1 peso or 3 billion pesos, it's still pork if the legislators are the ones implementing it. So,
Mr. President, why let the poor suffer and abolish a laudable program way before our time if it is tainted by isolated incidents of lawmakers or congressmen who abuse the process? It pains me to abolish the Tulong Dunong, which has been there for decades before I joined this chamber, just because there are abusive personalities who go with the photo ops of the checks and letters to the CHED.
because it is the Constitution, Mr. President.
Mr. President, Tulong Dunong is under the CHED. It is an augmentation of what before was not existing because we only enacted the Free Tertiary Education Act. And even if college tuition is free, the other expenses are humongous. It's even not enough, even despite the fact that we give free education and tulong dunong of how much? 6,000 or what? With life being so difficult, it would be so painful of me. I would like to say yes to you, Mr. President, but can we please meet in caucus or even just agree? Because I honestly don't think that the CHED's Tulong Dunong is a pork barrel. I believe and I agree with you that it is the abuse of perhaps some or even just a few who seemingly join in the implementation. But I do not think the CHED allows these lawmakers to implement it. And if they do, they will be held accountable. But Mr. President, to implement a Tulong Dunong, which will help an indigent youth traverse the, go through the bundoks and take a tricycle and buy his or her almusal and buy a book. Mr. President, that is not provided for under the free tertiary education.
That's the reason why we have institutionalized free education in this country, Mr. President. Mr. President,
alam
free
ko.
tertiary education. You know, I'm not anti-poor. I was born to poor parents myself, and I was able to study in public schools. But it is the Constitution. We might as well amend the Constitution to suit the need for a program like Tulong Dunong and let the congressmen, let the legislators implement projects in that regard, Mr. President.
So tanggalin natin. O teka, suspension, Mr. President. May I ask the
Suspension.
Senate President to come down, please?
Very suspended. Session is resumed. Before the suspension, or
Thank you,
during
Mr.
the
President.
suspension, there was a caucus, a mini caucus between Senator Lacson and Senator Legarda, joined in by the President Pro Tem. So may we hear the proposal that we to resolve this issue on the Tulong Dunong program? May we ask the President Pro Tem?
Mr. President, I understand the concerns of Senator Lacson and that of Senator Legarda, and maybe how this should operate is that nothing prevents a congressman from endorsing a potential scholar for as long as rules are followed, vetted by CHED. So maybe we should write a special provision in this fund that the congressman is allowed to endorse subject to the regulations issued by CHED and the vetting of CHED. Halimbawa, since these are allowances to be given, halimbawa to poor students, then the CHED would have rules governing this. The endorsement should follow these rules. Hindi naman pwede siguro, bilyonaryo, bibigyan mo ng allowance. Ito para sa mga mahihirap to. So dapat yun ang sundan ng CHED. So the congressman may endorse, subject to the regulations and the vetting by CHED. So maybe at the appropriate time, Senator Lacson, myself, and Senator Legarda can write the special provisions on this matter. Thank you.
But it cannot be denied, Mr. President, that the Tulong Dunong or the universal access to quality tertiary education is a big Tulong Dunong.
That is correct.
Because the concept is the same, the implementation is the same, practically the same anyway, because I think the Free Tuition Act is more comprehensive
That is
in
correct.
helping poor students.
Correct. The problem is, laging kulang ang budget for
That's why
education.
we should augment the budget of
Correct.
the CHED
Correct.
to support the Free Tuition Act.
The
So we might as
universal
well-
access to quality education.
Yes,
That is
we might
correct.
as well transfer the amount, the fund intended for Tulong Dunong.
That's fine with me. I have no problem with that. And my understanding is it should all under be the CHED to begin with.
And they should vet.
And basically to implement
Yes.
the Universal Access to Quality Education Act.
Yeah, I agree. I was supposed to suggest the same proposal, Mr.
Correct.
President.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, so
I agree, and I thank Senator Lacson for his wizened intervention, and of course, grateful to Senate Pro Temp Ralph Recto for helping me craft the special provision that will be acceptable to all senators without abolishing or depriving our indigent youths of their necessary assistance.
all right. So we can move on?
Moving on, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you.
In relation to the same issue, we all know that there are 4 phases or stages of the budgeting process. No? Preparation under the executive branch, and then authorization, exactly what we are doing now. And then it goes back to the executive for execution and then accountability. May description po ako rito. Preparation is tedious. Ano? Authorization is devious. Execution is complicated. Yung accountability, yung medyo breath of fresh air, Mr. President. Now, what makes up the National Development Plan, Mr. President? Shouldn't it be a major consideration in the preparation stage of the budgeting process in support of the state policy of local autonomy, Mr. President?
Agree.
Ito po yung sa preparation phase
Yes.
being undertaken by, and I'm glad that you included a special provision on this. Ano?
I learned from you.
Everything
And I
should emanate from the local development councils through their local development plans, and then it's approved by the Sanggunians, and then it goes all the way up to the RDCs for vetting, and then NEDA will come in, and then the BCC bago mag-budget call.
Tama po
My,
kayo.
my question is this being practiced, Mr. President?
Mr. President, hindi lang po yan. Natuklasan ko po sa haba-haba ng panahon na sa gobyerno ko na dahil sa ating mga batas at sa mga bagong implementasyon, 3 ang meeting ng meeting na hindi nag-uusap. Yung Local Development Council yan ang nakasaad sa inyong PowerPoint. Dahil sa bagong batas na NDREAM noong 2010, meron pa yung Local Disaster Risk Reduction Council. And of course, the Local Peace and Order Council. The different members, the others are similar or the same, but not identical. They meet at different times with different frequencies and don't necessarily coordinate and converge on the plans and the needs. And so, I ask them, if possible, to meet together and to submit their plans so that the Local Development Council knows the risks in the area and can plan for sustainable development, and so that the Peace and Order Council and the security threats in their area, if you're in Marawi or in Maguindanao, you would know what to ask in the Local Development Council. Hindi ba ho? Yung security needs, yung environment needs, yung climate needs, lahat ng needs for agriculture, dapat ini-input yan sa LDC. Then yes, they bring it to the sanggunian. You're correct. Municipality or city, and then they bring it to the province, that brings it to the regional, that brings it to the national, and then they craft their needs for the President's budget in the NEP. It's a long, tedious process, but it is the right process because we really have to know the needs in the purok and the sitio and the barangay. And those are what should be reflected in our budgets. So I'm one with you on that.
That is correct, Mr. President. In fact, the local development plans should have an indispensable influence in the crafting of the national budget, at least the President's budget. And that's mainly the reason why we see governors, mayors, barangay chairmen loitering around the Senate corridors and even in our offices, because there's a big disconnect between the needs and priorities of the local government units and the national priorities.
I agree. Mr. President, despite this old decades-long law, despite the fact that every year we say this and you stress this, despite the fact that I ask it time and again and many other colleagues in the hearings, there's a disconnect. I go to the remotest barangay, sa bundok at sa ilog at sa mga lawa, hanggang footbridge hinihingi. Sabi ko, bakit hindi nyo sinabi sa inyong kapitan, sa inyong mayor, 4th, 5th class municipal, hindi alam ng gobernador, hindi alam ng region. Tatawag pa ako, either sa ASEC, sa USEC, o minsan sa kabinete, sa maliliit na bagay. O yan, pwede yan. Saan ba ang menu? Kalahi seeds, palista ko. So para akong kapitana na naglilista ng mga pangangailangan ng purok at sityo. Totoo po yan. Tanong nyo kay Atty. Doblon, tawag sa akin kapitana, naglilista ako ng kailangan nilang maliit na footbridge. Kailangan nila hanggang ang maliit na equipment, hanggang sa handloom nga na hinihingi, hanggang sa isang makinang sira-sira na yun lang ang gusto nila sa buhay. So nagtataka po ako, saan nagpupunta yung bunga ng mga meeting ng LDC kung ito ay kailangan pang senador umakyat sa bundok para malaman ang pangangailangan ng purok.
So my question, Mr. President,
Malaki ang disconnect.
my question is this being observed in the preparation of the national expenditure program?
Okay, to be fair to NEDA and to the national government, yes, it's being observed. In fact,
So why do we see governors, mayors, and barangay chairmen loitering around the premises of the Senate and even in
I will
some
answer you
of the
later. Okay, ito po. This
Why
is
is there a disconnect between the needs and priorities of the local government units and the national budget that we are enacting, Mr.
You're
President?
correct. I agree with you 200%. Ito po muna. To be fair to the national government, to the best of their ability, they're doing it. Ito po ang total cost of RDC-endorsed projects vis-a-vis amounts included in the NEP. If I'm reading the total amount, it says 325 million to billion. million. Excuse me, Mrs. Neda, just 1 minute. There's a total amount of 16,724,925,915.52 of total cost of RDC, Regional Development Councils, endorsed.
Ay, ma'am, iba-iba itong item, kaya hindi ang total. For yan, this is not the total, that is for level 3 water.
So, ang total po ay 16.7 RDC endorsed projects. Nasa net ba itong 16.7?
Ito mamang na-approve sa Farm to Market Road.
Tas I have that, okay. So your question is this being done? To be fair, yes, it is being done. In fact, I know my governor of Antique is a chairman of RDC Region 6. She tells me what happens, and I tell her kung anong dapat gawin, yung advocacy ninyo, sinasabi ko, Senator, ginagawa naman namin at sinasabit namin. Kaya nga po, ito ang suma total, 16.7 na endorsed ng RDCs of all the regions. At dahil dyan, there are farm-to-market roads na bunga po ng RDC endorsed projects, 9.950,500. Meron Salintubig na 1.549641 base sa RDC. May communal irrigation na 8.564275. Local roads and bridges, 37B 882640. Water supply system, 325317. So, nangyayari naman po. Pero bakit sabi nyo at nararamdaman ko na malaki pa ho ang pagkukulang ng pangangailangan at hanggang barangay kagawad? Buti sa inyo, gobernador at mayor. Ako hanggang kagawad po, tinetext ako. Tanong nyo sa mga staff ko. Kaya, midnight, sumasagot ako sa mga, kapitan. Di ba? Barangay kagawad ng Camiguin.
And this is not without
No,
basis.
ibig ko sabihin, hindi sila, so, maaring ginagawa, pero hindi po inclusive masyado yung proseso, maaring napopoliticize, hindi nasasama yung iba, maaring yung kapitan siguro na hindi gusto nung mayor o gobernador, hindi hinihingi lang ng tulong. I'm just trying to explain bakit may proseso na maganda at may output naman in all fairness to the national government, pero malaki pa rin ang disconnect. And you're correct. Loitering all over the place. We entertain them and cannot say no. They're all in the lounge. Asking for projects which they said are not funded for decades. And I'm shocked that they can't even get through their mayors, governors, and RDC. So, help me. Where is the disconnect? I think it's politics. Maybe they're being excluded if they're not aligned with the local chief executive. And I think also not everything submitted to the RDC, of course, is accepted because that's vetted by the NEDA. And third, because of the nature of our country, because we are an archipelagic nation of 7,100 islands, how can we actually know in central Imperial Manila the needs of Simunul in Tawi-Tawi? How would we know the needs, let's say, in Coner, Apayao? How would you know the needs of Patnongon in Antique? So that's why we have congressmen. That's why we have senators who go beyond our job of lawmaking para sumiksik sa mga purok at sityo so that we can fill in that disconnect.
And there's basis in the Constitution and further articulated, again, ang reference ko lagi yung pork barrel ng one of the culprits, Mr. President. Look at this, considering that the local development councils are instrumentalities under BELHICA po ito, whose functions are essentially geared towards managing local affairs, their programs, policies, and resolutions should not be overridden nor duplicated by individual legislators who are national officers that have no lawmaking authority except only when acting as a body.
Mr.
So,
President.
kaya nagkakaroon ng disconnect because district representatives are not attending the local development council meetings in the crafting of the local development plans. They are members, Mr. President. They are represented even down to the barangay development council. That's in the local government code. Kasama sila sa local development council. Hindi ba dapat doon sila nakipagbakbakan?
Hindi raw kasama.
No, they are kasama, Mr. President.
Advisory committee lang, sabi ng NEDA.
They can attend, they can debate, they can discuss, they can participate, they can propose, and there will be their voices in the halls of Congress.
I am informed by NEDA that their district representatives are members of the advisory committee, but not, what do you call them, the RDC, but not members of the RDC, but they're advisory, so they can attend.
But they can send the representatives to attend the barangay development councils,
They should.
council meetings.
In fact, that's what I will
They
do
can
when I'm
attend.
congressman, because I believe so much in this
You
process.
should do so, Mr. President.
No, I'm already doing it as senator.
You should attend
Yes.
the...
Barangay.
No, the local development
Local
councils.
Development Council,
And you can debate, you can
Yes,
discuss, you can
yes.
propose your own
para
projects.
malaman natin yung mga, alam mo, hanggang spray sa dengue hinihingi. Would you believe, hanggang mga net, mosquito net, sa DepEd schools, hindi, screen. Hanggang po sa mga screen sa DepEd school, dahil maulan, ay kailangan. Bakit tatawag po sa senador? Hindi ba alam ng inyong DepEd supervisor, superintendent at ng principal? At hindi pa nakakarating sa mayor at sa gobernador. Text sa amin, sa chief of staff ko, kailangan ng net. So talagang may pagkukulang. Tama kayo. Dapat ilagay natin special provision. Senator Recto can do that again. No, maganda ito. Na lahat ng congressman,
Mr. President.
kailangan may representante sa local development council.
Mr.
Kaya walang
President,
talo
may
sa
I-
Senator Recto sa bawat presinto sa Batangas kasi ginagawa niya yun
Ganado.
Diba?
Mr. President, may I, just to respond to the comment of NEDA that district representatives or congressmen are not members. Section 107 of the local government code, composition of local development councils. One,
let's
members,
start correct.
wait, Mr. President, members of the Sangguniang Barangay, representatives of non-government organizations operating in the barangay. Three, a representative of the congressman.
Yes. You're
Sa
correct.
barangay po ito, pero sa municipal and provincial, the congressmen themselves are members.
Yes. Tama po kayo.
So
Sa
they are not
LDC
mere advisory committee.
Hindi.
They are
Sa RDC
members.
po, iko-correct ko po. Ay, hindi ko correct. I'll clarify. Sabi po ng NEDA, sa region, advisory. Kaya nga, baka i-correct natin yan. Dapat
No,
member.
sa RDC, Mr. President.
Kasi sa LDC, kasama sila.
They are members.
Pero sa region, advisory lang.
Saan ba ang bakbakan, Mr. President? Di ba sa
Isa.
local development councils? Ang RDC, medyo mapping up operation na lang yun.
Kasama na sila sa
To
RDC.
use a military term.
May proposed NEDA bill, including the congressmen in the RDC. Isama na natin.
No, that's the ideal, and that is in the law, Mr. President, in the local government code. No, I just read the provision,
Correct.
section 107.
No, sa LDC nga po. Pero sa RDC, hindi nga kasama.
No, not the RDC. I'm referring to the local development councils,
Yes, kasama.
municipal, provincial, and
Kasama sa
barangay.
local, sa region, hindi nakasama. Kaya dapat amendahan.
Alam niyo kung bakit hindi sila sumasama? Dahil pagdating sa Congress, insert sila ng insert. Kaya nga mayroong disconnect. Kung kasama sila sa discussion, sa pag-craft ng local development plans to be submitted all the way to NEDA and the DBCC, dapat naka-input na yung mga projects nila doon. In consultation or in collaboration with the local development council.
I agree with you.
Ayaw nila sumama because gusto nila mag-insert na lang sila pagdating sa Congress.
May we have a special provision reiterating the importance of the presence of the congressman or the rep in the LDC, which is already here in section 107 and in the Sanggunian, and because based on info from NEDA, they are not included in the RDC but only as member of the advisory committee. In the absence of the NEDA amended law, we can just make it a special provision, making them a member of the RDC to be consistent with the LDC. Pwede yun. Oh, hindi pa napapasa yung amended NEDA bill di ba? Hindi pa. Making the congressman a member of the RDC. Di tayo na magawa sa GAA. We can do that.
They may not be members of the RDC as long as they're members of the LDCs. Then it will serve the purpose.
Hindi, kasi baka
Hindi naman
mawala
sila
along the
kailangan
way.
maging member ng RDC, Mr. President.
Baka mawala along the way. Baka
No, but they will represent their local government units in the halls of Congress when they debate or discuss the budget in the
Correct.
plenary.
Pero mas maganda kung along the way, kasama sila. Kasi
Wala,
kung hindi kakampi ng
ano problem
congressman
with that,
yung
Mr.
gobernador na member ng RDC, papatayin na dun pa lang yung proposal mula sa LDC. Ito, titingnan politika lang. Kung proposal lang isang kapitan na tao ng mayor, na tao ng congressman, nandyan yan. Pero pagdating sa RDC, kung ang representante ng probinsya ay gobernador na hindi kakampi ng kapitan at saka ng mayor, baka natulog na sa RDC at hindi umakyat yung proposal. Maaring ganon, di ba? Kaya kailangan yung district rep, alam niya mula sa simula hanggang maisabatas, i-shepherd niya yung pangangailangan na tulay.
That is correct, Mr. President.
Oo. Ayun, di nag-agree.
Hindi, that is supposed to be the situation. Na yung congressman, kaya hindi sila insert kasi vetted na in the local development councils, of which they are members, yung kanilang mga projects in their districts.
So, ang ibig niyo sabihin po, na ang ini-insert nila, or no, hindi na kailangan
Hindi na
mag-insert.
mag-insert.
Hindi na kailangan mag-insert. Pag sa NEP pa lang, tama na. Kasi
I-depend na lang
alam
nila.
nila yung pangangailangan ng purok.
Yes.
Tama po kayo.
So, i-depend nila pag may nakikialam na aalisin yung project ng
Oo,
kanilang
alam
districts.
nila.
Alam nila na properly.
Ito yung tulay
Yes.
na 2 ilog na naglalakad ng ilang oras, kailangan ito. Ganun dapat alam mo ang distrito mo. Tama po kayo. Kaya gagawa kayo ng special provision para po isaad. No, importante
I'll
ito.
pass it on to the Senate President Pro Tem, Mr. President.
Senator Recto, who's an expert in local government, will craft that special provision because I am so supportive of that. I'm a believer that all politics and all governance is local, not local province or municipality, barangay, purok. And if we make all these government resources accessible to the poorest of the poor in the puroks, then we will not have insurgency or poverty, believe me. You're correct. Let's do all this and make sure mag-simmer down sa pinakamahihirap ang
That is correct.
development.
That is correct, Mr. President. And kanina, sinabi ko nga, articulated sa Belgica, kaya nagkakaroon ng overriding sa duplication ng mga individual legislators kasi nga, wala silang pakialam doon sa needs and priorities of the local government units. They do it themselves. Whereas, if they attend the local development councils and participate in the discussion, then they know more or less the needs and priorities. So, anyway, I'm mostly correct, Mr. President.
Did you say always or mostly?
Mostly.
Yeah, that's why I agree with you mostly.
Now, next question, moving on, Mr. President. We're not done yet with the pork barrel issue, no? Should the budget be a political tool for legislation? Let me read another portion of the ruling on Belgica. The court finds an inherent defect in the system which actually belies the avowed intention of making the equal the unequal. In particular, the court observes that the gauge of PDAF and CDF allocation or division is based solely on the fact of office, without taking into account the specific interests and peculiarities of the district the legislator represents in this regard. The allocation, division, limits are clearly not based on genuine parameters of equality wherein economic or geographic indicators have been taken into consideration. So, we'll proceed now to the admission made by no less than the majority leader of the House. Ito, sabi niya, all congressional districts to receive equal budgets. So, hindi ba violation dito ng Supreme Court ruling on Belgica? Dahil sinabi nga, you're making the equal, the unequal. Kasi hindi naman pare-pareho yung needs ng bawat districts. Pero they're distributing 60 million per congressman. And that's another tacit admission that pork is alive and kicking, Mr. President. By the way, dinamay pa tayo. Mr. President, distinguished sponsor, meron ba talagang 200 million ang mga senador? Madam Sponsor. No,
Oh, your question, I cannot speak for a congressman, Mr. President.
no. But she also accused the Senate of giving out a uniform 200 million to each senator. My question is, meron ba talagang 200 million ng bawat senador?
Mr. President, you know, since I assumed the chairmanship of the Finance Committee, you know in every caucus and even personal conversation, they asked me, ano ba ang kayang amendments? I said, can you leave it to my discretion? Just submit what you believe is needed, whether it's a helicopter, which you and Senator JV recommend for the PNP, or the PNP Command Center, or body cameras, or it's a seaplane, which you said is needed, or it's an immigration building, which you said that should be built, or it's the UP system dormitories, or it's scholarships, or farm-to-market roads, or an airport on Bukidnon, or et cetera, et cetera. I don't think the totals to 200 million. It could be more, it could be less. So there is no cap, there is no limit, there is no smaller or bigger. It would depend on the need, as you say, of the constituency, of the district, of the province, and of the agency. And every agency writes me, the vice chairs, every barangay captain, congressman, mayor, etc. But because you gave me that duty to suri all of these requests, then I do, to the best of my ability, we assess it along with the LBRMO staff. Kailangan ba ito? I'm sorry, hindi pwede ito, hindi kaya ito. So there's no such thing as 200 million or 2 million, but it could be any amendment of any senator because that is part of legislation.
Will you agree with this representation that distributing 60 million to each and every congressman, all 297 of them, would constitute pork?
First of all, I cannot answer that question because I am not sure that the basis of that question is accurate because I do not speak for the good congressman from Bicol. So ayoko pong ma-misconstrue because we are on Facebook Live and I don't want to be misunderstood. I don't want to be misquoted.
That is why I read out earlier the Belgica ruling in this regard. Yung sinabi, inherent defect in the system which actually belies the avowed intention of making the equal the unequal. Kasi nga, ginawa mong equal yung unequal because hindi naman pare-pareho yung pangangailangan ng bawat distrito.
Tama po
Bakit
kayo,
mo bibigyan
iba-iba.
ng pare-parehong 60 million?
Maaring may
So my question is, isn't that pork? In your honest opinion as chair of the Finance Committee for many, many years, is that pork or not?
Mr. President, ang dapat po ay ang congressman alamin ang pangangailangan sa LDC hanggang sa RDC at maaring higit pa sa 60 million ang pangangailangan ng kanyang
I'll
distrito.
show you that it's more than 60 million. No, most of them or all of them got 60 million, but some blessed few got more.
But
In fact,
let me
much more.
just-
I'll show you later.
Let me just
But
clarify.
Please answer my question first. In your honest opinion, is that pork
Let
or
me
not?
just clarify first, lest it be misconstrued. This is not 60 million cash. This is probably
I know that, Mr.
60 million
President.
identification of projects that
Ay,
can be
eto na naman
implemented
tayo,
in
Mr.
their
President.
districts.
We
It's not for you. It's just to educate everyone who is watching.
Till kingdom come yung discussion na yan, Mr. President. Yung they're not holding the cash. We know that. It's lots in all the agencies. Pero sino yung nagpipili ng mga projects? Anyway, Mr. President, let's move on. Okay. Even the Speaker of the House, Mr. President, sabi niya, we're not going to give zero budget to anybody, even those people who don't like me at all. Nakuha na yung listahan ng mga zero budget, bibigyan sila ng budget as a gesture of goodwill, as if it's their money, Mr. President. Gesture of goodwill. mamimigay ng 60 million as a gesture of goodwill. Is that their money, Mr. President? No, Mr. President. These are issue-based ang discussion natin, no personalities. Nangyari lang na siya yung speaker at siya yung nagsalita ng ganyan. So, both of them, sinasabi nila, kailangan pare-parehong 60 million. And since you refuse to answer my question,
Senator Recto, who was a former congressman, can answer.
anyway, Mr. President, let's proceed. The House of Representatives amendments, no? Ayan. Ito yung, they passed on second reading na mayroong alterations na do sa NEP. Of course, that is their duty, no, to amend. But between October 3 and the date of the transmittal to the Senate, meron pa silang ginalaw without going back to plenary. Okay? And first, the 51.792 billion pesos in the NEP, no? And adopted on second reading by the House. Yung 20 billion, ito yung hinati-hati nila sa 297 congressmen at 60 million per congressman. 20 billion divided by 297 million or 297 congressmen, may butal pong 67 million na nilabasan. So, all in all, meron silang extrang 2.1 billion pesos. Saan po napunta yung 2.1 billion? I'll show you later. No? Yung naiwang 31.792 billion from the 5172 or 792 billion, ito rin yung allocated to the different agencies, projects, chosen by some congressmen. No? We'll show you. Please, next. And then there's another 4.982 billion, kaya naging 56 yan eh. Kasi 51 lang yung sa DPWH na inatado. Allocated to the different agencies and the local government support fund. Kaya ang total niyan, now, I asked Secretary Villar, because my point, the point that I'm trying to drive at, Mr. President, is that there's grave abuse of discretion involved here. No, I asked Secretary Villar during our committee hearing, no, tinanong ko sa kanya, nag-consult ba sa inyo yung mga congressmen when they decapitated the budget of the DPWH, yung 51.792 billion, at nilipat nila sa mga ibang projects? Ito po yung sagot niya. No? It wasn't part of our original submission to them. But of course, this is a discretion. Sinama niya ng DBM, but I suppose the DBM is not part of the act of Congress when they realigned the 51.792 billion. Okay. Going further, sabi niya, I would never dictate to Congress how to do. If you're asking me about those entries, that's not I think you will have to ask Congress, but we weren't really involved in that process. So, if Congress realigned, no, projects or funds for projects that were earlier vetted by DBCC, by the Department of Public Works and Highways, by the agencies themselves, isn't that tantamount to grave abuse of discretion? Mr. President, wala pala akong kausap dito.
I'm hearing you and I'm asking DBM. I'm getting the figures, Mr. President. According to DBM, there's a pool of projects coming from various sectors. That's the universe of all their projects in preparing the President's budget. This was included by the DPWH. So there's remaining X number of projects. Correct me if I'm wrong. They saw some fiscal space, and they put in some additional projects in the President's budget. The DBM Secretary, of course, puts together all the needs of all sectors, of all departments. Secretary Villar is the head of one department, and his submissions and the submission of everyone in government is this whole room. If Secretary Villar put this, and there was fiscal space, So DBM added this. Secretary Villar knows this, but it was probably not the initial submission, but because there was fiscal space, and I'm the DBM secretary, and I don't only do the budget of public works, but I do the budget of whole, and it is my duty to do the president's budget, so I added here. And so,
I'm not questioning the NEP, Mr. President.
no,
I'm
yun lang
questioning
po
the
ang paliwanag ng DBM kung bakit po sinasabi na hindi alam. Galing po sa universe na yon na ito ang unang linagay, tapos po may fiscal space, naglagay
No,
dito.
we're not talking here of fiscal space because these are itemized. Itemized po yung 51.792
Yes.
billion under the NEP. Ang tanong ko, was there consultation made by individual legislators or congressmen or even the Congress itself when they realigned? Nagtanong ba sila sa agency na pwede ba nating i-realign to sa ibang projects ng DPWH din and other agencies like DA? Yun po tanong ko.
Hindi na yung source ninyo.
Was
You're
there
not asking
consultation?
anymore. Okay, so it's no longer Secretary Jokno and Secretary Villar. You're already talking about the 51 that they moved elsewhere from the
Including
left to the
20
gap.
billion for their individual 60 million.
So 1 minute, was there consultation?
May consultation po ba?
So nandun ka na sa next, tinanong ba ng COC, ililipat nila from...
Yes. I'm not questioning the NEP kasi it underwent consultations eh. Oh, kung hindi konsulta, hindi ba babalik tayo sa letter D, yung grave abuse of discretion? So, pork pa rin. How could the congressmen just identify projects on their own without consulting the agencies? Now, okay, Mr. President, we'll move further. Kung walang consultation, babalik lang ako sa letter D. Letter D, doon sa unconstitutional acts no, under Belgica. Ayan, no. All informal practices of similar import and effect which the court similarly deems to be acts of grave abuse of discretion amounting to lack or excess of jurisdiction. Or discretion, that's not jurisdiction. Is it pork or not, Mr. President?
Mr. President, in the budget call, there is a tier 1, tier 2.
Mr. President, wala na po tayo sa budget call.
No,
Nasa authorization na tayo, wala na tayo sa preparation.
No, it's part of my explanation. Just give
Okay.
me 30 seconds.
Okay.
Sa budget call po, may tier 1, tier 2. Maaring sa NEP, tier 1. Not to defend the congressman, I'm trying to reconcile what they did. They probably got those in tier 2 where and they changed the NEP as part of the GAB using those in tier 2. It's possible.
Pero, Mr. President, pag hindi ka nag-consult sa agencies, paano malalaman kung, di ba discretionary yun? Bigla mo na lang nilagay sa proyekto. I'll show you to which projects
So, yung pinaglagyan
napunta
nila
yung butal.
Sa tier 2.
Please, show the slide. Yung insertions,
Yung NEP, hindi...
insertions and total projects of at least 2 lawmakers, Mr. President, under the General Appropriations Bill between tinransmit sa atin. No, not that one. Yung additional.
NEP to GAB, hindi na tier 2.
Here, Mr. President. Initially, doon sa NEP and as approved on second reading last October 3,
Sabi ni Mark, hindi niya alam.
one congressman,
Kita tayo, HOR version ng sabi niya.
meron na siyang 360,405,000 pesos. One congresswoman, meron na siyang 726,710,000. Now, after October 3 and before approving on third reading, nagdagdag silang dalawa. Yung isa 1,545,901,000. Si babae, nagdagdag ng 1,545,901,000. 698,109,000 pesos. Ang total nilang dalawa under the GAB 2 that we received as transmitted. The congressman has 1.9 billion pesos. The congresswoman has 2.424 billion pesos. Now, my question is this pork or that? Madam Chairman, is that pork or pork?
Mr. President, huwag kayong magagalit, ha?
Hindi po ako nagagalit, Mr. President. Galit lang ako sa pork talaga.
Kasi po, naintindihan ko yung proseso, na sigurado ako naintindihan nyo, iba lang siguro pananaw natin, na hindi ko po linalagyan ng mali siya. Kasi po,
Ako po, mamali siya ako pagkaganyan, Mr. President.
hindi. Okay, no,
Obvious, kitang-kita naman eh.
Hindi, let me just explain. I'm trying to be very understanding in the process. Kasi po, ang proseso ng legislation ay, iba naman talaga po yung final at iba rin yung katapusan sa lower house.
That's a
at iba sa
given,
atin.
that's a given,
Kaya
Mr.
po,
President.
ito po, it's the power of the purse. Diba? Congress has the power of the purse. So may karapatan silang maglipat, magtanggal, magdagdag, ayon sa tingin nila, karapat-dapat sa ahensya
Pero hindi
o sa
po para sa
distrito.
sarili nilang projects, Mr. President. Magdagdag sila sa ibang ahensya. Okay? Can you beat this? 500 million pesos in farm-to-market roads alone in one district. Malulunod sila doon, Mr. President.
Baka pinapasemento ng mga bundok.
Farm-to-market roads, 500 million
Sino yan?
pesos just in one district.
Sino nga yan? Sino yan?
I'll whisper to you later, Mr. President. But it's in the GAB. It's a public document. It's there. I'll show you later. Kayo na magsabi kung sino yon, kung kaninong distrito. E di maglagay ka rin sa antika, Mr. President. Bawas.
Hindi. Turo mo sa akin, kasi kawawa naman yung probinsya ko.
Yeah.
Tatlong dekadang napabayaan. Kukuha
my
ako
point-
doon ng pang FMR namin. Oh.
No, levity aside, Mr. President. My point here is grave abuse of discretion as ruled under Belgica versus Ochoa by the Supreme Court. Tapos sasabihin nila walang pork. Sinabi nila, all informal practices with similar import and effect. No? Pork din eh. No question. Will you help me delete these insertions
Can you,
on record, Mr. President?
can you please pinpoint to me, either on
I'll
record?
show you the list
Yes.
there.
Kasi kailangan
Yung
may
mga
pa-
naka-highlight, yan yung mga distrito. Yung nasa distrito. Okay. Hindi, bibigyan kita ng kopya niyan. Nasa atin yan, Mr. President. Binigay sa Finance Committee yan. Okay. Meron pa dyan, susunod. Yan ang mga insertions na ginawa. I don't know who's from Lubao, Mr. President. Look. It's all in the books. It's all in the budget books. All you have to do is to scrutinize. And another question, alam nyo madali mag-track sana kung hindi nila tinatanggal yung UACs. Unified Accounts Code Structure. Kasi meron sa DBM yan eh. But when they submit the NEP to Congress, to the lower house, pag ginawa nila yung GAB1, which should be a faithful reproduction of the NEP, tinatanggal nila yung UACs. Why? No, not here. Pagdating sa atin, wala nang UACs eh. But UACs is yun ang code na magtatrack kung saan napupunta yung mga items, yung mga pondo. But why would they deliberately remove the UACs na present do sa DBM, do sa NEP? Pagdating sa atin, tanggal na. Why? Well, hindi kaya nakawin ng kalsada, pero abuse of discretion. We're talking here of the Belgica ruling. That's why I keep on insisting there is pork, there is pork, there is pork. Letter D, please. Belgica ruling, letter D. Pakibalik nga. Ayan. Ayan. No, it's not vague. Grave abuse of discretion is not vague. When you abuse your discretion, that's, maski nga yung lower court na re-reverse ng Supreme Court pagka mayroong grave abuse of discretion. Mr. President, gusto mag-suspend muna? Hindi naman. Ikaw ang pagod eh. Suspend na muna tayo. Few minutes lang.
Limang items lang dati yun.
Yeah.
Session is suspended.
Nakakapikon, tapos they have the temerity to deny that there is pork.
Ah,
Raffle po kanina kung address.
21.
Pero yung bayan muna, yung number.
Sino?
Bayan muna.
Hindi, suspended. Suspended. All the way, suspended na to. Next week na, adjournment. Session is resumed. The chairman of the Committee on Finance. Senator Pimentel is recognized. Before the break, on the floor was Senator Lacson and the chairman of the Committee on Finance. So what do we do now, Senator Lacson?
Mr. President, I'm suspending my interpellation to give way to our other colleagues to also ask their questions.
All right,
I'll just
anyway.
resume after Senators Recto, Pimentel,
And
Ontiveros, and
Senator
Dillon.
Dillon, yes, Senator Dillon has made reservation at 2 o'clock. So we can now recognize Senator Pimentel for the interpellations on the chairman of the Committee on Finance, still on the principles.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the permission of our sponsor, Chair of the Committee on Finance, these are some questions to enlighten this representation and all of those